I was in a class recently. We were teaching a class on diversifying your practice. In fact, it was not only about diversifying your appraisal practice, hence why I call it diversifying your practice. It was also about diversifying your practice when you're not acting in the capacity of an appraiser. So we kind of covered a lot of ground relative to acting as an appraiser, and maybe when you're not acting as an appraiser, other things that you could possibly do to make money. Well, one of the topics that came up during the conversation was relocation appraisal work. And what I found very interesting was I asked the audience, how many of you do relocation appraisals? And only two hands went up. And of course, my hand went up too, so that would have been three. And I told the class, what's interesting here is if I was the relocation company, I would be forced to use these two individuals because normally they get at least two, sometimes three, sometimes four. And it's really, really good work. So I want to talk about it. And I have a special guest to help me talk about it. So come on back and join the conversation. Hi, this is Brian Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. You need some education? Check us out at appraiserelearning.com. We've got all kinds of stuff on the calendar and more being added on every day. Before we get started, I'd like to thank my sponsor, LIA Administrators and Insurance. Thank you very much for your continued support of the Appraisal Update Podcast. Listen, guys, I've got a great guest. I'm super excited. Byron has really built her up to me over the years. So Lisa, be ready. He said lots of great things about you. And I'm excited to have her on as a guest. It's Miss Lisa Meinczinger. She's an SRA, AI-RRS, ASA, RAA, CRP. Oh my gosh, so many credentials. Did I forget any? Welcome,
I don't
Lisa.
think you did.
Good. Well, that's a lot of letters past your name, so that means you've done a lot to earn those. So, welcome to the program. I thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Before we dive into relocations and the exciting world of relocation appraising, why don't you tell my audience a little bit about Miss Lisa?
Well, I have been appraising for about 25 years now in central Indiana. Born in Buffalo, New York, transplant to Indianapolis. So I basically was born here. I've been not only trying to appraise and expand my business, I'm also an instructor for the Appraisal Institute. And I'm real active in a company and an organization called Relocation Appraisers and Consultants, which we deal with relocation work and complex assignments. Been active there for probably about 6 years, and that's probably about it. I have a house in Greenfield with two pups, a grandchild, and one on the way. So,
Oh, congratulations! How exciting! Very good. Well, so you are a practicing appraiser. Now,
yes.
do you work by yourself, or do you have a team? Or tell me a little bit about the dynamics of your appraisal company.
I am a one-woman shop, so
Okay.
it's just me in here, and I do, residential work, a lot of complex energy efficiency, relocation work. Lately, I've been doing a lot of the rural work that nobody wants to do. So I've been trying to just expand that way, getting into litigation and divorce work and things like that.
So, do you, as part of your practice, do you do mortgage work, purchases and refinances as well?
Yes, I do lending work as well.
Okay, and I'm sure you're not insulated. We all have seen a pretty drastic slowdown as a consequence of the interest rates going up. I assume you're not immune to that.
No, I have. I've seen an influx of relocation work starting back up or pre-foreclosure type of thing. But yeah, work is starting to trickle back up. Purchases aren't going to go away. We all know that. The
Sure.
refinances are going to slow down. But other than that, that's why I thought maybe I need to start diversifying a little bit, the relocation work has started picking up as well.
Great, great. So I really want to dive into that, and I want, one of the things that I've said over many, many years is that there are several opportunities for work that appraisers can secure, and I kind of tag it as interest rate safe work. Okay. For instance, if you're an appraiser, if you're one of my listeners and you have focused primarily on mortgage work, purchases and refis, you're probably hurting really bad. And I'm not insulated. Lisa and I are both in the same boat. I mean, it's impacted my business too. But if you do some divorce work, I say the statistics on that is over 50% of marriages, sadly, are going to end up in divorce. And second marriages, over 70% of second marriages end in divorce. And third marriages, who are you kidding? Don't even try it, right? I mean, it's sad to say, but the rates are very, very high. So regardless of the interest rates, people are going to get divorced, and they're going to need help in determining value or developing opinions of value of those marital assets, right? People are going to die. So estate work is going to be needed. Unfortunately, people are going to file bankruptcy, right? So all these things I call interest rate safe. They're going to widen and build roads regardless of the interest rates. And companies are going to relocate their employees. So I want you just for a second to talk to the novice, or maybe the non-appraiser. Maybe it's one of my listeners that's not even an appraiser. Explain to my audience what is a relocation, what is a relocation appraisal, and a little bit of how that works, Lisa.
A relocation appraisal is about the same as a mortgage appraisal. The only thing you're dealing with is we're looking at forecasting. So that is the main difference of what we do. We're still looking at interest rates, and we're still talking about the market in that sense. But at the end of the day, the company is wanting to know what the anticipated sale price of that subject may be anywhere from 90 to 120 days. So when we're looking at it, what I love about this work is we're doing an extensive look of the market. We're looking at all the listings, all the competing sales. We're looking at, expireds, withdrawns. We're looking at, year to year, 6 months to 6 months, quarter to quarter. So you're doing a very deep dive in that analysis for that market, because we want to make sure that our clients are aware of the asset they have, because 9 times out of 10, they have to buy that property back so the home or the transferee can move to the next property, and then they have to sell it on the open market. They don't want to lose their tail at the end of the day. Yeah. So, it's about the forecasting. It's about understanding your market a little bit better. It's understanding what's going to truly compete with your subject.
Yeah, these companies, and that's what I love about doing them. These companies really genuinely want to know what the value of these properties are. Would you say there's little to no pressure, client pressure in these, as far as, hey, I need this value, or right, be real conservative here. They want to know what they're worth, right?
There's absolutely no pressure. The only time that they come back at you is when the other appraiser has something in there that you don't, or they list a listing or a sale that you don't have. They just want your opinion on it. They want to make sure they're fact checking at this point to make sure that everyone's information is the same about living area and finish and quality of construction. And, why didn't you use this sale? I had one recently where they came back and they gave me all of these sales and these listings and said, why didn't you use them? And it's because they're in Ohio and we are 45 minutes from Ohio. We had no business going over there. So I didn't have access to them. So they're just trying to fact check us, make sure that we're, doing what we're supposed to do, and they know what their asset is. So that's what's really important.
Yeah, so they will scrutinize the reports pretty thoroughly, right? And yes. You as an appraiser should stand behind your work product. I mean, it shouldn't be a problem with someone taking a very deep dive or an extra look into your work product. You should be doing your job effectively, right? So yep. I welcome that. And so I remember one time, one company called me and they said, hey, the other appraiser used one of the same comparables that you used, and the other appraiser has down that this comp has 1,800 square feet, and you have down that the house has 1,923 square feet. Why?
Yep.
And I said, well, that's a really good question. I said, if you'll notice in my commentary, I put down that it was the appraiser's files. You see comp number 2, I did the appraisal on that when that sold. So I personally measured that house, and I know it was 1923 because I measured it. And they said, oh, okay, thanks. And then what they did is they called the other appraiser and said, hey, why do we have a difference? Or maybe they called him first. He relied on the data source he thought was reliable and credible, 1,800, and they didn't beat him up over that. He had a valid explanation of why he did what he did. I had a valid explanation of why I did what I did, and they just wanted an explanation. They saw a difference there. And do you find that happens on a regular basis? I mean, they'll put the reports side by side, won't they? And they'll look through those, and they will call you and ask you for those differences.
Absolutely. The one that I just referred to, it had dormers and, space over the garage. So the roof pitch wasn't all there. So it's not living space. So the other appraiser just used what the sketch was. They came back and said, there's 563 square feet difference. What's the difference? And I said, if you look, we have an opening for the stairs below. We have the dormers. We have the roof pitch. They can't live in that space.
Right.
So, in times like that, they're going to have a third appraiser out there to see, to make sure that you have two that are most similar. But as long as we're within 5% of each other, there's usually not a problem or a call. But as appraisers, shouldn't we be within 5 or 6%, 5 to 7% of each other anyway for doing our job?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I was about to ask that. It's funny you said that. I just wrote that down, and I wrote difference. And I was going to ask you, what is the kind of the standard there as the difference between you and the other appraiser that would warrant, either a call or maybe even a possible third or fourth appraisal?
Usually, if your square footage is more than 100 square feet, they're going to call you. If your value is way off, if you're more than 5%, they're going to call. They're not going to call me and say that other appraiser had X amount and you had this. They're just going to start questioning that. And at that point, that there's a big difference. So usually you take another look at the report to make sure that you did everything you were supposed to, and it makes sense. At the end of the day, does it make sense? Is it reasonable? Can you support it? We still have to support adjustments. We still have to support our conclusions. Is it fully supported? Does it make sense?
Right. So let me ask you, is there a lot more work in you said you do both. You do, first mortgage transactions and refis. Would you say there is double the work or not double the work in doing a relocation appraisal versus a regular URAR? How much more work or time does it take you to do a relocation assignment?
For me, it takes the same amount of time because I still do on my mortgage work. I've incorporated that market analysis in an Excel sheet, and I fill that out for my mortgage work. So for me, it takes the same amount. About
the same amount of time you have invested. Okay. So, and I know we can't talk specifically fees, and I'm not going to ask you that, but is the fee that you charge for a relocation assignment comparable to a fee you charge for a first mortgage transaction, or is it more or is it less?
It's more.
More.
It's more, it's more. And if you feel that you need to charge more than their norm, you just tell them, and I've never had any blowback because they do want to pay us for our time. They do want to pay us for the experience and the knowledge. That's why they come looking for us, because we have that experience, that knowledge. They don't mind paying that as long as it's not ridiculous.
Sure. You don't be greedy, right? Don't try and gouge a client. But what I'm hearing, and what I want my audience to hear is, Lisa's saying that she can do a relocation appraisal assignment in about the same amount of time that she would do a purchase transaction on a URAR. She has no pressure. I heard her say that, right? So it's still about the same amount of time invested, but the fees are more on the relocation assignments than they are on the URA assignments. You got my attention, and hopefully you're getting some of my listeners' attention. How many appraisers in your market area, or let me step back. How many total appraisers are there in your market area, and what percentage would you say participate in doing relocation assignments?
Ooh, I don't have those numbers. I know I'm in, metropolitan Indianapolis, so we have a high rate.
Okay.
I want to say probably out of the numbers we have, maybe 5 to 10%.
Wow. Wow. So,
I know a handful of people. That's why with belonging to relocation appraisers and consultants, a lot of the relocation companies come looking there to see if there's experts in the area. I know I'm the only one in Indiana that belongs to the organization. So I'm always on the list for quoting because we do quote time and quote fee. And the homeowners have an opportunity to interview us to make sure we understand the market and their area specifically, and whatever questions they may have, we answer for them. So I'm
so,
always on that list for that interview.
so before you start, and I want to get to rack in just a minute, but before we do, you're telling me when you're potentially going to be chosen for an assignment, you may have the homeowner, the property owner, call you and interview you before you get the assignment.
Absolutely.
And what?
Transferees will call and they'll ask questions about how long have you been appraising? What do you
Okay.
know about my area? How much work have you done in this area? Or they'll just ask questions. I've redone this. I've redone this aspect of my home. I've done this. What would you do? How would you handle this? They're just trying to get to know you as a person and as an appraiser as well.
So, unlike the mortgage work where a consumer can't choose the appraiser anymore, you're saying in this arena, the consumer or transferee, as you call them, do have a say so in who's going to get that relocation appraisal assignment.
Yes, they have the choice of two because there's two done every time.
Right.
So they choose to. Sometimes already working with realtors, and the realtors will help them choose. But they'll look at your credentials. They'll look to see if you have that CRP. They'll look to see if you have taken the worldwide ERC class, the relocation class, if you belong to them. So they'll look to see what you've done to better yourself as a relocation appraiser.
I love it. I love it. And you said sometimes the real estate professional would refer as well. So there's something to be said about maybe trying to look for those real estate agents that participate in relocation listings and, try and establish a rapport relationship with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So before we get into RAC, and then you even mentioned ERC, uh, I wanna ask you to explain a couple of things. You mentioned the term forecasting, and you also talked about what we call an anticipated sale price. And I talk to appraisers, my students, all the time about, there's all kinds of different values out there, right? There's going concern, there's replacement value, there's market value, there's assessed value, there's insured value, there's bronze value. There's all kinds of different values out there, right? So an anticipated sale price is not market value. Now it could result in the same result, right? It could. But an anticipated sale price is actually something different than market value. Can you explain to the audience what is an anticipated sale price? And then also would like to learn a little bit more about forecasting, or my audience too.
Well, with anticipated sale price, it's no different than us trying to come up with an anticipated list price for a homeowner when they call and they say, I want to list my house. Where should I list it? So we're looking at what the relocation company or the RMC can anticipate on getting by selling the dwelling. You know, per use PAP, we've got to find highest and best use, and that helps determine market value. We still need highest and best use in this report. However, again, the value we're looking at is what is it going to sell for, which may or may not be market value. In 2 years ago, what it was selling for may not have been market value because things were going up and there were bidding wars and we were making these assumptions that we're still going to be at this accelerated increase of market conditions. So while you're looking at it, you have to take a step back and remember we're not looking at market value. We're looking at what the RMC or the relocation company or the client is going to be able to sell the subject for if they have to.
Great, great. What about forecasting?
Forecasting, we're looking at, in the times where everything was on the market for a hot minute, they still wanted to know what it would sell for in 90 days or 120 days. So we're forecasting what it's going to be. So if market conditions are accelerating at a high price, we're going to make a positive, increase. If we're going into a slow market like Christmas time, fall, winter time, we're going to be subtracting, we're going to be making a negative forecasting adjustment because it's going to be slowing down. We're looking at how the market is going to be reacting. You may not have to have a forecasting adjustment. Everything may just be stable and ready to go. But with the increasing market of spring and going into a busier time, we're going to have a positive market, a forecasting adjustment because of that. You're going to look to see what your market is going to absorb, what it's going to want to do. We look at absorption rates. So that's going to help us determine that forecasting adjustment. Are things absorbing in a pretty decent time? Or are they on the market for an extended period of time? So we're going to have to adjust for that. So that's what we're doing with forecasting. We're basically trying to use our crystal ball to see what's going to happen in 120 days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, for my listeners or viewers, if you're thinking about trying to get in this space, which I encourage you to do, when you get interviewed by the relocation companies, because as Lisa said, the homeowner or transferee might interview you on this particular assignment, but to get on their list, rest assured, the relocation company is likely to interview you as well. And one of the questions they're going to ask you is, what's forecasting? So you better be prepared to answer that question. Lisa, one thing that I've done historically when I've tried to explain anticipated sale price versus market value is, it's like I'm a property owner, or I call you up and I say, hey, I am done. I'm retiring. I'm out of here. I own a property in your neighborhood and I don't care a thing about market value. I want to sell this thing. I want to sell it quick. What would it take for me to sell this house in a week? Now, everybody knows in the last couple of years that you list it and you'll sell it in an hour, right? But historically speaking, if it would take 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months to sell a house, what would make mine sell in a week? Well, if we keep lowering that price, right? If we keep discounting that price, at some point it will sell, and it will sell very quickly. So you're developing an opinion of an anticipated sale price tied to that 1 week time frame that I put on you, as opposed to market value would be tied to that 3 or 4 month exposure time that we were talking about a moment ago. So recently, during the last couple of years where real estate's been just flying off the shelf, an anticipated sale price might end up being the same amount as market value because they were all really, really hot. But now, since the interest rates have went up, have you seen those times expanding? I'm assuming the answer is yes to that.
It is. And it's just been funny because when everything was on the market for a hot minute, they were wanting an anticipated sale price of 120 days. And I'm like, before I even put the transferee's name in the report, the house is sold. So,
yeah,
I don't know what to tell you because it's not going to be there.
You don't need 120 days. I could give you 120 minutes if you want, right?
Exactly.
Lisa,
and that's a good point what you brought up, but they got to remember too, when the seller's motivated on that, then you may have another different definition of value. So while they're still motivated to get it done within a certain time frame, we're still looking at what it's going to sell for within that time frame. Absolutely.
Sure. Hey, I want to talk to you about RAC. You mentioned worldwide relocation, ERC. I want to talk about some of these things in just a second, but let me give a special thank you to my sponsor, LIA Administrators and Insurance. Since 45 years, that's a long time, LIA Administrators and Insurance has been offering E&O insurance to valuation professionals. They provide superior customer service, exceptional liability education, and great claim defense to serve over 10,000 real estate appraisers nationwide. They have all types of coverage, so jump over to liability.com to learn more about how LIA can help protect you and your business. Lisa, thanks for being here. I'm super excited to have you on. We're going to definitely have to have you back because I have a feeling you and I could probably talk for days. Let's real quickly before we jump to RAC talk about. You said something about education, and you said ERC, and so when an appraiser's doing a relocation assignment, they don't use a URAR, right? They don't use a narrative format. What form do they use, and how can appraisers be aware of this particular form?
It's real important that we do not use the 1004 because you're talking about mortgages and lenders at this point. When we use the ERC form, it breaks everything down. We go into detail of what is the kitchen counter. On the mortgage reports, we don't talk about that. We don't really talk about the interior of the subject to the extent that this form does. I want to say the form, and I should know because I just completed one last night. I want to say it's about 5 or 6 pages,
Yeah.
and then you're adding in your commentary in there as well. But it breaks it down as to you'll talk about the neighborhood, and then they'll ask you, how does the neighborhood appeal? Is it fair? Is it neutral? Is it good? You'll talk about that as to why is it that way. So they break each section of the report down for the marketability or the market appeal or the aesthetic of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is a different form, and you have to use it. It's what they're looking for. So
Yeah, that's pretty universal amongst all the relocation companies, right? And they
yes,
really get into the appeal of the characteristics of the subject property, right?
yes.
What the decorating is and what the appeal is. Is it neutral colors or is it purple walls? I mean, they ask some of those questions as well. Talk about the education that you mentioned a moment ago from Worldwide real quick, and then we'll get into RAC.
Worldwide ERC has a relocation course that you take. I wouldn't say it's real in depth, but it gives you a good understanding of what to expect, how to fill it out. There are books that come with it. Worldwide ERC also has the Certified Relocation Professional credential, the CRP, which is pretty extensive. I just obtained that last year, and it's really interesting to
Congratulations.
find out how the transferee looks at everything, how the companies look at everything, the different programs that they have out there for the transferees. If especially with the market coming in, we were talking about how they're going to have a buyback program for them. I can't think of the name of it at the moment, but there's different markets for them to go into so the transferee doesn't lose a lot of money, but yet then the relocation company won't lose money either when trying to resell. So it's interesting to do if you're looking for any kind of continuing education or want to expand your business. I would highly recommend the classes, and just to more knowledge is better than no knowledge.
I tell you, when I used to do ERCs quite a bit, and we still do. We just we just did one a few months ago, but when I was doing them often, I remember one of the things I liked about it also was it's almost like you could grade yourself, right? But because you weren't being engaged to appraise the property after it went under contract, and then you're trying to see, well, what's this worth, right? And I know what it's selling for. You were doing it before it went under contract. Maybe the relocation company's going to buy it, maybe they aren't, but at some point that thing's going to sell, and you take that out and you're like, oh yeah, I want to frame this and put it on my wall because it sold for what I said. And then of course the ones where you miss substantially, you're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that one. Can I bury that one somewhere? So it's almost like a test, that you were grading yourself on, and I really enjoy it. It's another reason I like court work. The reason I like court work is the trier of fact, the judge or the jury, they're really trying to figure out what these properties are genuinely worth. And I love doing that type of work. Let's talk about RAC for a minute. What is RAC? What do they do?
Relocation Appraisers and Consultants, RAC. We are an organization that is primarily for relocation appraisers. However, we have expanded to include appraisers that are doing complex assignments. So we basically are taking the best of the organization or best of the profession and putting them in an organization together. What I really love about this organization is the camaraderie and the fellowship we have amongst each other. So if I have a question about any kind of litigation work, I have a contact I can call. If I have a question about a relocation assignment, I have a contact I can call. So it's just another nuance that we have out there. We're a small organization that is growing, and we're expanding. We've got a conference in September. It's the 14th and 15th, where our clients come. So it's one of the few conferences I've ever been to where our clients are there, so we can talk to them and they can put a name to the face. And with you talking and networking with them also turns into you becoming a better client for them, and receiving work from them. Or we have a lot of our sessions that are telling us how we can be better relocation appraisers. Some of our topics this year we're going to be talking about forecasting. We're going to be talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, contributory value of high efficiency homes features, the relo trends that are coming up, and the current state of the economy are just a few of the topics that we have coming. It's I don't know. It's like no other organization I've been part of. They are just down home, happy people, and when we come together in Plano, it's like a family reunion type of thing.
That's great. So I was talking to Lisa the other day, and this is the first time we've met on screen and or virtual. I talked to you on the phone, and she was telling me a little bit more about it. And I pulled up their website, and they have a little video that's going in the background. I'm like, well, there's Sherry. I know Sherry. There's Ernie. I know her. Before I knew it, I'm recognizing several folks that come to your event, folks that I respect a lot. Miss Sherry's been with you guys for a while. She's out of Knoxville, Tennessee, I think, and one of my favorite people on the planet. Just a great human being. So it was kind of cool to see those familiar faces in the background. So let's talk about that again. You have an annual conference. This year it's in September the 14th and the 15th, 2023, in Plano, right?
In Plano, Texas.
If one of my listeners is interested, or hopefully many of my listeners are interested in participating or coming to that conference, where do they go to find out registration information and how to sign up?
www.rac.net. Okay. That's our new website. Ernie just did our website. It's beautiful. So we'll have the conference the day before. We're putting together a class for the contributory value. Right now, Texas has some kind of mandates about HERS ratings. So we're going to have a 4-hour CE class available for that, for anyone that's in Texas. And just talking about the efficiency ratings, all that stuff is relevant. It's coming into play. And as appraisers, you don't know what you don't know. So attending a high efficiency class, it's a necessity.
And I think you told me that you also have, if somebody can't make this particular conference, first of all, you said it's every year in Plano, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if they can't make this year, maybe next year. I have a conflict, so I'm probably not going to be able to make this year. Although I am happy to say that Appraisal eLearning was happy to sponsor the event, and I wish you much success with that. I hope to be there next year. Let me ask you. I believe you told me something about you guys also do a town hall. So talk a little bit about that, and where can somebody participate in that if they'd like.
Well, and thank you for the sponsorship. We really appreciate that.
You bet.
We have a town hall summer series coming up, and our first town hall is on Tuesday, June 20th. I believe it's at 2:00 Eastern time. We're going to have Christopher Posey talking about how he diversified his business and how we can go about doing that in the time of, mortgage work not being as plentiful and volatile as it is at the moment. And we're going to have in July, I don't believe we have the date as of yet, but we'll have it on the website. We have a lady from Texas, I believe, that is going to be talking about body language and how to read body language in litigation and just in general. And in August, we have the Urban Land Institute that is going to be doing a water rights, who owns what type of thing. How do we value droughts? How do we value areas that have been flooded? They're going to come in and do an 1.5-hour town hall for us. And it's free. It's usually just about an hour and a half with questions and answers. Members, non-members are welcome. We welcome everyone that is interested in the topics to attend. Usually there's a link that will go out, and you just join in and it's an hour's worth of education.
So did I just hear you say that this is for members and even non-members?
Yes,
Oh, that's
absolutely.
great. Oh, fantastic. And you said the price was free, I think I heard you say. That's incredible. So if someone wants more information about that, they also go to the website for the town halls that you have coming up?
Yep. www.rac.net. I believe there's an events tab that will break it down into the conference and to the town halls.
Great, great. Lisa, thank you so very much for being here. You've been a real treat. I could keep you on all day, but I know you're very busy. I've got another one too. But if someone wants to reach out to you directly, they want to get more information about RAC, they just have some general questions about relos, or just wants to talk to you, what is a good way for one of my viewers or listeners to reach out to Miss Lisa?
I am on LinkedIn, but I can also be reached at HoosierAppraiser@gmail.com or at 317-523-6257.
Those
I
dang
welcome
Hoosiers.
any questions. Hoosier. Yep, I'm a Hoosier. I know who my daddy is, though.
See, that's that. The Kentucky and Hoosiers, we always have that little back and forth there. So, well, thank you so much, Lisa, for being here. We'll definitely have to have you on again, and maybe we'll have you on again after the conference, and you can kind of update everybody on how the conference went.
That would be fantastic.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Appraisal Update podcast. I encourage you to check out RAC. Think about getting your feet wet in the relocation space. I'm thinking about entering that again. I've never stopped. It's just I kind of minimized how much I was doing. But she's got me very interested in exploring picking up additional clients to maybe do more of that work. And I'm probably going to join RAC while I'm at it, right? So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm your host, Bryan Reynolds. Happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.